Today on Hoarders, the Region Free Gamers podcast, we're talking... I swear I'm not a hoarder. I swear, I'm a collector. Please don't judge me.
Welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast fluent in gaming. Today, I am your host, Kelly, navigating us through the crazy world that is video game collecting in 2021. But of course, before we get started, I can't do this alone, so I had to go out and find some co-hosts. And of course, I went down to my local retro store, and hidden behind the glass was a deal I just couldn't resist on Paul. Hello, Paul. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm in the section that has the oldest games.
So hidden behind Atari 2600. You're still in the glass, though, so you know you got to be worth something. Otherwise, you'd be on the shelf.
True. You're fine.
Yes, good point.
Of course. And then, of course, after that, I went and checked out my local Facebook page because we got to have that gaming Facebook page. And I found all these moms that were trying to sell off their child's Madden games for like $20 to $50 each. But among all of that, I found Mike. And I had to haggle down the price, but I did get him. So, Mike, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Whatever you paid. Probably too much.
Nah.
Probably a little too much.
Nah, it was a good deal.
On that Facebook.
It was definitely a good deal. And then lastly, of course, we had to go to Goodwill. So at Goodwill, I found all these empty cases of stolen games, and behind the used furniture in those kitchen appliances, I found a copy of Arnie. Arnie, how you doing?
I'm that guy when people go to Savers, you know those like little bags they have that just have like miscellaneous like action figures. I was just in one of those.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're still a hidden gem there, so.
That's right. Yeah, unlike Mike, whatever you paid, I was worth at least double that.
Of course.
Yeah. I love like picturing Arnie like popping out of the bag, like giving you a deal on it, like starting haggling you down on it. It's like, no, you don't want this for 10, you get it for 5.
I got $3. That's all I got, so.
Yeah.
I pictured Arnie at the Goodwill, like next to the pea-stained couch. That's kind of... Maybe Liam Neeson sat on it. I don't know.
Hanging next to all the Mad Catz controllers, missing fucking joysticks and shit.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the Goodwill that's in the downtrodden area, so it kind of smells funny.
Exactly.
And you're not quite sure if you want to go there after dark. Yeah. But yeah, before we get started today, I did also want to thank all of you, our listeners. You enable us to keep having these amazing gaming conversations, and we do appreciate that greatly. If you enjoy listening, please drop us a review, or you can join our Discord and talk to us. We're always having some crazy conversations on there. And you can always find all of our links there on Linktree at Region Free Gamers. So Linktree, Region Free Gamers, you can find us there and find our links to everywhere else. All right, so, of course, this is the big episode for me. I've been wanting to do this one pretty much forever. It's all of our passion. It's all of our hobby, what we do in our free time, collecting video games. Some of us collect more than we play, maybe. Some of us play more than we collect.
Oh, that's silly, Kelly. You're a silly person saying silly things.
No.
Yeah, I buy stuff and play it immediately.
I'm actually kind of happy that this year I managed to play more than collect. So it's the first time in probably like 20 years
awesome.
that I've been able to play more than collect. Like for me, I can tell you, I've always been a gamer. From when I was like 2 years old, my father put a controller in my hand and played games with me. But for those first years, I didn't consider myself a collector, just a gamer. I have a ton of Super Nintendo games from childhood that are in mint condition, but those aren't because I was any kind of collector thinking that someday they would be worth anything. It was more just because I was an extremely picky child that did not want creases or anything on my games.
Sprouts. Get that shit out of here.
Yeah, I love it.
So I didn't become a collector till much later, and I would say that the game that turned me from a gamer into a collector was actually .hack/quarantine the fourth game
Really?
in the Dot Hack series. The first 3 games had come out, and I had bought them all as they came out. But that 4th game had come out at a time in my life where I just didn't have money for it. And as the years went by, it became more and more expensive and harder to find. As time went by, I just didn't have the time. I couldn't find it anywhere until, I want to say it was about 7 years ago. My husband came home. We had just got the house, so I just finally had a game room for myself. And he came home and he was like, "Hey, I saw that Doc Hat game at a card shop that I frequent, because he's into Magic the Gathering." And I was like, "I want to go get that game. I want to finally complete my collection."
Yeah.
So I went down, and it was $85. First time I had ever paid over retail for a game.
Yep.
But I finally, after all those years, had a complete collection of Dot Hack games. And after that, since we had just gotten to Phoenix, moved to Phoenix, I started looking around and finding there was a huge retro scene out here. Started going to all the retro game stores and started going on the Facebook groups, meeting all the local collectors. And that's basically how I became a video game collector. And that's how all this in the background happened, because it was nowhere near that size before that.
It's incredible looking at it now. That's amazing. And so in 7 years, you're saying that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Wow. What was the console, if I can ask? What was that first console?
The first console that
that you played with when you were a kid?
That would have been the Atari 5200.
Hey.
Oh,
not the 2600.
Man, that's awesome.
My parents, they weren't
Starting off with quality.
Yeah, they weren't huge into gaming, so they weren't into the Nintendo was out. Well, it was nearly out at that point. I'm not quite sure, but we didn't get a Nintendo till much later. But they still had that classic gaming system, so I just grew up with that, and then finally begged them for a Nintendo years later, and just kept on going with that.
Sure.
You love to see it, man. Like filling up that Dot Hack collection. I must have felt.
Oh yeah,
I know. That must
the
have felt
spines make a little
fantastic.
picture.
Yeah. And the next game the most expensive game I got was always Panzer Dragoon Saga. A couple of years later, that's when I was like, okay, I'm in this for life, I guess, because
That is a commitment.
I had just gotten a huge bonus from my job, and I was like, there's a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga somewhere here in Phoenix, so let's go track it down. Sure enough, found one. At the time, it was $300, so knowing what it is now, good investment.
I know.
Yeah.
That was a steal.
But at the time, it was like, holy crap, I'm paying $300 for one game.
I know.
Yeah.
And now now it's almost reasonable.
Yeah.
Which is something we're definitely gonna talk about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Mike, how did you get into game collecting?
Oh man, so
I hope you're not going to blame me, Mike.
I'm absolutely gonna. I mean, partially blame you. Absolutely, partially blame you. So I got into I've been playing games forever, kind of like everybody here, but again, sort of similar to what you were saying, Kelly. Like, no, I wasn't like a super hardcore collector. I still kept some of my PlayStation games, but that was the oldest I had for like years, basically up until PS4 and Xbox One. And it was around that time, we still had all our old consoles. My parents had them, and then in one of our moves, they lost them. And that was like, that was one of the biggest times where my parents. I'm sort of jumping around a bit, I know, but it was funny because just to say, like, my parents, I don't think I've ever seen them that sorry and feeling that bad.
Yeah.
Like, talking to me, like, they were flat out like, we're so sorry. Like, we know it meant a lot to you. And I'm like, whatever, it's fine. Like, it's okay. Like, at that point, it was kind of no big deal. But then something interesting happened. So there was my brother had a Sega Genesis that he was just sitting there gathering dust in an old Dreamcast carrying case by chance, actually.
I feel like that's a crime in some states.
And he's like, here, like, I'm not playing this. You just take it. And I'm like, all right, whatever, man. And then like I took it. It had about 12 loose games and manuals. Out of those games, we're talking Arcus Odyssey, Shining Force 1 and 2, Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4.
Garbage.
Just the shit.
Trash.
The bad shit.
Yeah.
I'll give you $2.
So we had all that. Beyond Oasis. Anyway, so I was like, well, I don't have anything to play this on, but whatever, I guess I'll keep it. And then magically one day there was a CRT television, like a VCR TV combo, just in my apartment building hallway. And I was like,
TVs are
why
the
not,
best,
bro?
man.
Yeah.
Like,
so I pick it up. It weighs like 100 fucking pounds. I pick it up. I'm like, oh, and I like, put it down. I plug it in. I start playing, and I was playing Beyond Oasis, and I just kept playing it until I beat it.
yeah.
And I was like, oh man, okay, like playing with the controller, I was like, this is different. Like I forgot, and so I'm playing it, and then I beat it. And at the end of Beyond Oasis, it has rankings. And the battery, obviously, in the cartridge still worked because it had all of my brother's rankings. We were all there.
Cool.
All of our names.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at it, and I was like, I got to get them all back. I was like, I have to get them all back. And so it was partially that, but it was also, hanging out with Paul during those days. And we both found out that I remember I was looking at his Instagram page, and he had that photo of him with a copy of Phantasy Star, and I think he was kissing it or hugging it or something. The stuff you do with Phantasy Star on Sega Master System. And he was holding it. And I remember, like, at one point I talked to you, and I was like, wait, you know about Phantasy Star? And he was like, you know about Phantasy Star? And then all of a sudden, we had no idea. We had known each other for years, but we had never talked about retro games. Ever. So as soon as the floodgates opened, and then before I knew it, we were playing ice hockey and Game Ground and hanging out. And then by that time I was already well and truly hooked. And I basically just started buying everything in sight. I would call myself a very undisciplined collector.
Damn.
I'm just going to say it right now. I am not that guy. I am not that guy who's like, well, I think I'll wait and see if I can get this for 5% of what that costs. I'm just like, no, I might never see it again. If I never see it again, I'm just like, okay, here it is. And then
So you've got that fear of missing out, for sure.
I'm absolutely a FOMO guy.
Part of the problem is what we call you.
Yes. We will talk. We will, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that later. But yeah, that's kind of how I got my start. Yeah.
Yes. Ernie, how about you? How did you start with collecting?
I don't know when I decided to start collecting garbage and put this trash all around me. Sort of decide to alienate everyone in my life. I think like Mike, it was sort of one of those things where growing up I played a lot of video games, but I did not really consider myself a collector in any sense. Like, I wasn't even as good as you, Kelly. Like, I threw boxes of manuals in the garbage. Like, I didn't read. I don't want to read. I want to play. So like, I threw away all my shit. I remember I've talked about it before. My parents divorced when I was very young, so I always had like, these are the consoles that are at my dad's house, and these are the consoles that are at my mom's house, and never the twain shall meet. And eventually all that stuff just ended up getting given away or sort of disposed of as I was growing up. And I could not have given less of a shit until I was about, I want to say 17 or 18 years old. And YouTube was sort of the sort of shining light at the end of that very long and dark tunnel of non-collecting ignorance that I'd been living in. So when I started watching, like, Angry Video Game Nerd, Happy Video Game Nerd, like all the classic YouTube guys that I'm sure are like, 70 now or whatever.
And still doing content, though. Still doing content.
I'm sure. Till the day
strong,
they
man.
die, I hope they never stop. Because I have a very like soft spot in my heart for all those old, like all the guys that were there in like 2007, like definitely have no idea what's going on now in terms of like any modern like lingo or like memes and stuff. That's what I want to watch. I want to watch some guy with like a DV camera where you can hear the tape whirring as like they're recording it in like 12p in their basement or some shit.
Yep.
Like, that's the kind of aesthetic that I live for. And I was, it's weird because I was born, my first console was a Super Nintendo, and all this content was like NES and Atari and Genesis and these consoles that I really never grew up with or knew, but I was just like, I want to play this stuff. Like, it looks cool. I want to see what it's about. I want to try it. And so I just from there, it just started going, right?
Yeah.
And it was always just, I never wanted to spend, and like, I've never spent 3 figures on a game, as far as I know. I think the most I've ever spent on a single game is probably like $70-$80. For me, it's all about like, get it as cheap as you can, bundle up everything. Like, quantity is king. You want to try as much as you can because you never know what you're gonna find. Like, there could be a game out there that has like fucking 3 Charlie's Angels looking ladies, and it's fucking Castle Shikigami or something, you know? Like, you never know. You never know what's out there until you pop it in your machine. And I'm sort of the opposite of Mike, where if I don't get the price I want, I very easily, like, I'll definitely find this later. And sometimes I do, and a lot of times I don't. But I've never, up till now, I've never regretted passing up on something yet. I'm sure I will eventually, especially the way prices are getting now.
Sure.
But for me, yeah, it was always like the thrill of going out, finding stuff, buying stuff, getting deals, bringing it back, playing it. That's what it was really all about. Like, whether the game was good or not, you know, at the end of the day, the story was more important to me than anything else. If you're talking about the exact moment when I was like, oh, I guess I'm collecting games now, I specifically remember when I lived in Virginia. This was like maybe 4 years ago at this point, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was with an ex-girlfriend at the time, and we had just moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. And I had about 4 bookshelves worth of video games, and they wouldn't fit in the 1 bedroom we had, so I had to line them up in the living room. And the look that she would get every time she walked in that room, just knowing that, like, everybody who walked into our house was now, like, blasted in the face with, like, my hidden shame. That's when I was like, man, I guess this is, like, more important to me than a lot of other things. 'Cause I'm willing to do this shit. Yeah.
Hidden shame.
So that was
that's your hidden
that was my
pride.
turning point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, I guess I'm okay with this being out in the open now.
Yeah.
And Paul, how about you? How did you get started with collecting?
I think I've mentioned this on the show before. It's worth, I guess, mentioning again, so to speak. This was about 7 or 8 years ago, I still had a lot of old Genesis games and Saturn games and a few PlayStation games and stuff like that. And I looked at, basically what happened was, we moved up here to Whitehorse, and I was going through my stuff. I was going through boxes, as one does when they move. And I saw Panzer Dragoon Saga. And I was like, I wonder how much this is worth. And then I went to eBay, and I was like, holy shit. Like, I can get $300 for this? That's crazy. I'm going to sell these, right? And then I looked at it a little bit more closely, and I looked at all the other games. I looked at Shining the Holy Ark. I looked at Gaia's for the Genesis, Lightning Force, aka Thunder Force 4. All these games that I had played and enjoyed, and I was like, you know what? I can't sell these. Like, they made me happy, and I loaded them up again and played through some of them, and they made me happy again. And I'm like, damn, if they feel this good, then I wonder what would happen if I went out and got Phantasy Star 4. And I wonder what would happen if I went out and got Warsong. And the list goes on and on. All these games that I played when I was a kid that I didn't have, suddenly I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to buy these because I like how they make me feel when I play them. That's it. That's what nostalgia is, really, in a nutshell, right? It takes you back to a time and kind of allows you to experience that again. And that's kind of priceless. So I'm, in a way, kind of the opposite of Arnie, which is that I don't care so much about quantity. I always want the experience, and I'm willing to pay what it takes within reason. There's a reason I don't own Musha. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't want fucking Musha. I want Musha, but like,
Hell yeah.
I just can't, right? I can't I can't.
Yeah.
I'd have to sell something in order to justify that, right?
Mhm.
So when it comes to paying 3 figures for a game, if it's the right game, yeah, no question, I'll pay it. Because at the end of the day, when I open up that box and I go through the instruction book, because I like to read personally, when I go through that instruction book,
Reading is for suckers.
Then I'm a sucker too. It's okay.
I know we're a bunch of suckers here.
But you
Me too.
do visual novels. You've said that, so
Oh, that's right.
I don't really read. I kind of like look at the screen and like the pictures move around.
Tells a great
I don't know
great
what's
story.
happening.
I could tell what's happening with their faces.
Dude,
Yeah,
those
exactly.
anime mouths are really known
Yeah.
for like their expression, right?
Super
Yes.
expressive. Super expressive.
Yeah. So anyway, there's nothing quite like getting that game and opening it up and putting it in a system and just playing it and just holding like an original controller like you did way back when and playing it. So
Yeah.
that's really kind of what it comes down to. I don't so much collect for value. The value is nice. I mean, how can anybody not look at the values of their collections, whatever the collectibles are, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure everybody starts out wanting to, whether it's comic books, whatever the case may be, I'm sure they start out wanting to kind of enjoy the hobby that they once did or continue enjoying the hobby that they still do or whatever the case may be. But like, you can't help but look at those values. So, it's not the reason, but I definitely look at them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I look at my copy of Chrono Trigger that I bought 5 years ago. I saw the value of it, I don't know, like a couple weeks ago. I was adding it to the Arnie, what's the app called? Game Eye?
Game Eye?
Game Eye.
Yeah, Game Eye. I was adding it to Game Eye and I dropped my phone, man. I was like, oh my God, what the hell happened to Chrono Trigger? So,
Yeah.
like I do look at that, but
Mhm.
I'd be lying if I said it was the reason.
yeah. Yeah, my husband always gets mad because I'll be like, hey, did you see how much this game's worth? This game's worth like $500 now. And he's like, you're never going to sell it, so what the
I know,
fuck does it
that's the
matter?
thing. It's this weird thing that I don't know about you guys, but I can't help it. I can't help but get hung up on the values, even though the values are ultimately pointless, because I know that I'm not going to sell these things. If there's ever a point that I have to sell my collection, it is because something bad has happened to me, right?
Yeah.
And then at that point, I will have other things to worry about other than
right.
collecting video games, right? So it's such a strange thing that I look at the values of these retro games now and I'm flabbergasted and simultaneously happy and unhappy, right? Because I'm happy that I have these things that are worth something, but unhappy that I have these things that are worth something and therefore I can't really get more of them reasonably.
Yeah.
But
I think it makes total sense. One, because we just gamify everything in our lives. So for me, like,
yes,
when my collection goes up, it goes down. I'm like, oh, I'm winning, I'm losing. It doesn't fucking matter. But and the other thing is, at least for me, it's part of the story, right? Like if you can say, oh, I got this game X number of years ago for X amount of price. Now look at how much it's worth. That's a good story. And if you say, I got it for X amount of price, now it's $1, that's also a story. Maybe not a great story, but still a story.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So it's just part of the whole tapestry of, like, the collection, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, I've definitely had this with other collectors where you go, you meet somebody, you see their collection, and the first thing you ask them is, like, oh, where'd you get this? Like, how'd you get this? What about this? Blah, blah, blah. And they'll tell you, like, oh, yeah, I got that at, I don't know, some swap meet down the road, or I got that when I went to this other state and I went out and I totally didn't mean to, but I found it somewhere and it was like, you know, and so it just becomes like another thing to talk about with other people who care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think it's like 1,200 some odd games right now, and I could probably go to the shelf and you pick out any game, I could pretty much tell you where it came from, because they all do have that story. And in, like, for me, collection, it's all about games I love too. So every game in my collection I want to play. Will I get to play them? Probably not. I probably don't have enough time, even if I was to sit in this game room from now until I die. But there is the intention of wanting to play every game in the collection.
Yes. Same. Yeah. Same.
Yeah, that's extremely important. I don't think my collection's anywhere near yours, Kelly. I haven't done all the math, but I have to assume it's under 500 games. And then when I actually end up doing the math, it's probably going to be way more. But anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't, like, I'll never own a game that's garbage because it's worth something. It just doesn't, I don't know, man. It's not for me. If it's, for people who enjoy the chase, that's a whole other ball of wax, but it's not for me.
You'll own a game that's garbage because you love it.
Hello, Technocop. Absolutely.
Hello, Yes. Thank you for coming, Technocop. We always appreciate when you stop by. No, it's funny, and the way you mentioned the nostalgia before, and Paul, and also about how, well, maybe I should play Warsong, or maybe I should play Phantasy Star 4, and it's cool because that reminded me as well, and I find it really interesting because it's this weird mix of seeking novelty but also nostalgia.
Yes.
It's kind of both. It's like you're seeking that feeling of, I never played that. Like, I never played that back then. I always wanted to. And then, that's a whole other sort of piece of it. And I think it's interesting that, obviously we're all kind of we all have our little differences when it comes to collecting, but and we're certainly not judging, but it's kind of interesting because I think all of us do kind of fall under that umbrella of, like, yes, it's fun to just kind of get random games sometimes, and Lord knows I got plenty, but at the end of the day, it's like, I want to play all of them. I find them all interesting or fascinating, or there's something about them that makes me want to actually play it. And, it's hard for me to picture exactly like in your words, Paul. It's like just buying something just so I have it, unless it's Extreme Sports with the Berenstain Bears.
Sure.
That was pretty sick on Game Boy. I'm pretty glad I have that, even though it's a piece of shit.
But that's the novelty again, right?
Yeah.
Like that's another thing, is playing a game that doesn't exist anywhere else. I can't think of an example right off the top of my head. No, wait, I can. ActRaiser, for example, right?
Right.
To be fair, I played ActRaiser when I was a kid. I loved that game, and many people did. But if I hadn't played it, knowing what I know now about ActRaiser, I would definitely want it because it's so unique. Yeah. There's very little out there that's like it. So that kind of stuff. I get what you're saying, Mike. You want to seek out that kind of thing too.
It's weird for me too. I have a hard time buying video game lots. Like if I see, even if they're at a good deal, because there's just too many things. I don't want to have to go around and resell half the junk that's in there. If it's not a lot that's 90% what I want, even if it's at a good price, I just pass it up.
Take it to your local game store, get credit, buy more crap, buy extra crap. It doesn't matter.
That requires work. You know what I mean? Like I have a whole bunch of stuff from lots. And it's just sitting, right? Because I'm too lazy
until
to
I come
sell it.
visit you and start picking through it.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Yeah. Deals, man. Bro deals all day long.
The only lot I can remember buying is a PSP lot a few years ago. And it was a really good deal, but it still had 2 games in it that didn't have the manuals. And anyone that knows me knows I'm CIB all the way. And those 2 games without manuals, they just sat in a separate pile away from the collection because I couldn't have them dirty my collection.
Because if your other games get too close, you're like, they might lose their manuals too.
Yes. Yes. So, and then I did eventually sell them on eBay because I just couldn't have them in the collection because they were not complete.
Could not stand them.
Couldn't do it.
You're just like, anytime you saw them in the room, you were like,
just flung them against a wall angrily.
Yeah.
I admit I'm anal with that. It's that's my hang up. Gotta be CIB. Gotta be complete. All right, and we are back talking about collecting in 2021 and how it's changed over the years. One of the things I've definitely noticed that's changed over the years is collector's editions. Collector's editions in video games.
Yep.
Maybe it's me, but I remember in the 90s, if I wanted a game and I wanted to show extra support for the game, I could buy the game. And maybe if it was one of those few games that had it, I could buy a strategy guide for the game. But that was just about it. The first thing I can really remember being special that came with a game would be Illusion of Gaia. That game came with a t-shirt if you bought it originally, which I can remember we went to a brand name store, which I don't even think exists anymore, and purchased that, and I would wear my extra large Illusion of Gaia shirt to school and get...
This was my question about this. Was it just a standard t-shirt, like every t-shirt was like extra large or something? Or were you somehow able to like request a specific size of shirt?
Oh no, it was one size fits all. We got to figure all gamers are extra large.
One size fits none.
At least XL.
It was the 90s. It was the 90s, so I definitely tied the knot in the corner and had that pitched down, you know?
Well that's the thing is like oversized shirts were in back then. Like that was, you could definitely wear that out easily.
Yeah, but I was a girl in the 90s playing video games.
It was a 10.
So it was still, hey, this girl is a nerd playing video games because girls don't play video games in the 90s. So
Yeah.
It's funny that you think that that's just like a 90s thing.
Well,
that like we've surpassed that stereotype.
Better, at least.
Okay.
It's gotten
Much better.
I mean, back then it was, I might as well have been a leper because playing video games, it was just like, don't talk to this chick.
Some guy walking around in his fucking Buffalo Bills jersey.
Yeah, probably.
Throwing his empty beer can at you or something.
Pretty much.
Man, those XLs, they drove me nuts, man. I had a lot of extra larges from working at EB Games. I had a Street Fighter Alpha 3. I had a Ridge Racer Type 4, which was like a nice shirt. But like they were all dresses on me. It was ridiculous. I could go camping in them. And so I had this sweet Tribes shirt that I actually still have. It's the only one that I kept. I gave all the other ones away. But like I can't wear it. Even now I can't wear it.
You should cut it into a like crop top and just use it for the gym.
Perfect.
I really should, yeah. I have to make sure that I don't cut the logo off the back.
Yeah.
Where it says, "No man is an island."
Oh, God.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
God,
that's
Tribes
so
kicks
fucking
ass.
sick.
Tribes is sick.
I do remember around the end of the Xbox 360 era when I was working at Best Buy, they did have Gears of War 3 shirts that were in all different sizes. But if you were going to the midnight release or you worked there, you had to get there early because they'd send like 5 smalls, 5 mediums.
Yeah.
100 extra larges, and it's just like, what is this stereotype? Come on.
It drives me nuts. It really does.
It's me. I'm the stereotype. It's me.
You were the guy. See, you were the guy who was rocking all the shirts.
I hate to tell you guys, but I'm the average, all right? Out of all this, I'm the one that they're going, oh God, it's like how the fuck are we gonna get one to fit on these guys? Oh, shit. Let's go triple XL. All right, cool. All right, that'll work. It's me, baby.
Mike had the sickest closet from like 95 to like 2007.
The problem is I was, like I was full of all these double XL metal band shirts, which I guess is would be about as interesting to people walking around in the 90s. So they would just be like, oh, what the fuck is this weirdo? Nope.
Anyhow, Illusion of Gaia.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool game. Good game.
It was a good game. I probably wore that shirt even though I got completely bullied for it, but whatever, you know? But the next real collector's edition I would think of, that I can think of really, is the Working Designs games on PlayStation 1. Basically, it was the only way to buy the game, so it's not like it was a real collector's edition.
Yeah.
But they started putting in a whole bunch of different extras.
Yeah.
like Lunar 2, it had a pendant that everyone at the time that was a cosplayer wanted that game because they wanted that official pendant so they could cosplay from the game. And I can remember
cool.
that.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, the pendant itself at that time was going for as much as the game just because of the cosplay back in the day.
Damn.
But I just remember all those Working Designs games and thinking they were so cool because they came with all these extras for the game.
Yep.
And then PS2, we had basically NISA, Atlas. They came out with the bigger boxes that would sometimes include a soundtrack and a art book. But once again, that was the only way to get the game. So it was more like...
Yeah, I was going to say, those were like first print run type of deals, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes only, like Kevin was saying, sometimes only print. Like, sometimes that was it.
Yeah.
Like,
they were such niche titles at the time that they didn't warrant a second print at any point in time. You had your chance of getting that first print or it was done. I do remember there was one game that did end up getting a second print years later. It was like one of the Atelier games or something, and it came without it. But it really, collector's edition at that time, I didn't see as being a big thing. You either got the game and it was awesome, or you just passed on it and that was it. And then
it really seemed like, and I could so correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it kind of seemed like collector's editions were very much standard for JRPG type fare. Like RPGs, JRPGs, those are the ones that got like the big box treatment. And it seems like it was more than anything just like a please buy this, like for fuck's sake. Do you want an art book? Like I'll give you a shirt if you want it. Just buy this, please.
It's true.
I saw it more as just love. I don't know. It always kind of felt like Working Designs had a personal touch, and that's
love in
what
exchange
I saw.
for $100.
No, Lunar didn't sell for more than retail, did it? I thought Lunar
I
sold.
think it may have been like $10 or $20 more, but it wasn't like...
It was more. Yeah. It was definitely more, but I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of in between. Like, I think it was both. Like, I think, like, there's no way that when you look at, you know, especially Lunar 1 and 2, and you look at the care that they put into it, even like, Thousand Arms was Atlas, never mind. But when you look at the Working Design stuff and you look at the care they put into it, it's clear that, like, there was a lot of love there. Yeah. But I think maybe, you know, when it came to PS2, I think that's when it really started to kick in much more of that vibe of like, please buy it, you know, because like the Atelier, like not the Atelier games, but the R Tonelico games and Sakura Wars and stuff like that. Like nobody was buying those, man. Like that was at such a time when it was just really niche.
Yeah, even the Growlenzer ones, like that one had like a watch in it and shit. Like, had like
the
a
special
lot
edition of it. Yeah. And the Generations version had 2 games in it. The Working Designs one was, I don't even know, like, would that be considered a collector's edition? I don't even know. But it was, that was kind of when it felt, you know, it's interesting because I've been thinking about, like, the explosion of it then on the PS3 and the 360 and how I can't help but think, like, is the huge influx of collector's editions coming from the dearth of packaging, that it's just been less and less physical materials as it goes on, you know, especially for that generation, the sweet spot, like, because in PS2, you know, you still had chunky DVD cases, you still had pretty chunky manuals, full color stuff. So I could see there it still being more of a niche thing. But even by 360, it was starting to be like, okay, manuals are no longer a thing. And it still felt like maybe the West was they were still trying to see what they could get away with. So, you know, like night vision goggles and shit like that.
Dude, it sort of seemed to me that it kind of, as video games became more and more mainstream, like the quote unquote like mainstream type games sort of started adopting this mentality of like, we're gonna make it into tiers, and so like we'll sort of break it down where like if you just want the game you can get that. Now if you're really a fan and you're like big into it, we've got your $70, we've got your $100, we've got your $150 type thing. Because I remember Modern Warfare was the one that I remember just milking the shit out of this stuff, where every single release for like Modern Warfare and Black Ops after that was like, what the fuck's gonna be in like the mega special edition they're gonna come out with? It's gonna be a remote control car. It's
not the Activision I know.
Yeah. The one I really remember that everybody was like, you need to get this one, was the fucking Halo 3 one with the Master Chief helmet. That was the one that everybody was like, you gotta fucking get that special edition, dude. Like, that's the one. If you're gonna get one, it's gotta be that one. You gotta get that fucking helmet that then you couldn't even put on your head because it wasn't big enough.
Yeah, I don't...
What do you got? Oh, sorry, Paul.
I think I was going to answer your question, possibly. Like, I don't know that it was necessarily moving over to digital, because I think early in the PS3 360 area, people weren't buying AAA titles just downloading, were they? Like, not that much. Certainly not as much as now.
No, nowhere near what they're doing now. Absolutely
yeah, it was
not.
a lot of Xbox arcade stuff, like a lot of small stuff people were buying digitally, but the AAA stuff was still... that was still physical. So I don't know. I don't know why
I'm
exactly
wondering, maybe
this started exploding.
Maybe because, let's face it, Chrono Trigger, I bought it. It was $84.99. Xbox 360 or PS1 games, I think, retailed for $49.99. They really haven't gone up that much in price since then. But
that's a super
cost
good point.
of developing these games has just exploded. So if you can throw these trinkets in that cost you like $5 to make, but you can sell for $50 to your biggest fans, why wouldn't you do that?
No question.
To make that
I mean, you're also saving a ton of money on packaging. Like, what it would cost to put like cartridges together, discs are like negative a fraction of that. Like, you could print millions of discs for next to nothing.
I think Kelly and Arnie have it down pat. I think it's now that you guys say that, it makes total sense. Like, it's a combination of like, well, we can't get away with selling just the game itself for a ton of money. We have to do this no matter how expensive it is to make. Yeah. So it's a mix of that and a mix of, hey, we've hit the mainstream. Let's see how much we can get away with from the whales out there, from the people who are going to who are willing to give us the money, who are like super into Master Chief and shit.
Yeah. That was the thing too, right? It worked. Like, once they saw that people bought it, why wouldn't you just keep going? And making it crazier and crazier. Like, I remember when I first got my 360, I was buying a lot of like early released, like I would buy things day one. Like, I have the original Assassin's Creed collector's edition that came with like a little action figure type thing, and the prototype one also did that. But like, I remember at one point, it kind of felt like studios were just trying to outdo each other. Like, I remember, I think it was Resident Evil 5 or 4. There was some release of that where you could get like, there was like a 1 of 1 where you could get Leon Kennedy's like replica leather jacket for like $1,500 or something. Oh. And like, there was a Saints Row 4 one where like it cost like $1 million or something. You could get like a Lamborghini and whatnot. Like, they just started doing like insane stuff, like insane. I remember, wasn't it Tom Clancy's Blacklist or something that had like a giant plane? It was like a toy like aircraft.
Guess who got to move that around Best Buy all the time? It was that one. I remember that one and the Titanfall one that came with like a 1:4 scale
with the giant statue. Yeah.
And they didn't sell, so it was just every month we were moving it around the store trying to figure out where.
I wonder if it was also like, I feel like the number of studios and because there was such an influx of like new players coming in and money flowing around, like obviously more studios pop up to develop more games, and like you're just like, how do we stand out? Like, if I'm Call of Duty, how do I stand out from every other first-person shooter on the market to try to like get people interested in buying this? And if you're like, oh, we've got military grade night vision goggles for $200 or whatever, I don't know. It just seemed like it was such an era of like dumb excess, which is kind of weird considering like what was actually going on in like 2008, 2009. Like, this country, like, this was not the time that you'd be going out to spend $300 on a game necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't, though, right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Eventually the brakes got pumped on this nonsense.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the gigantic Titanfall box. Man, that Titanfall box is egregious. Like, Jesus Christ. At least if you're getting... what's the 360 or the Xbox game? The tank game.
Steel Battalion.
It is Steel Battalion. Okay, I was going to say that, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. Anyway, at least there you're getting like a really cool controller you can play with, right? Well, I'm in a tank.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But like, instead of a statue, I don't know. Who has room for this stuff? I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
People who film YouTube unboxing videos and need background filler.
You are correct.
Sets.
Thank you, Arnie. That is exactly
I'd be curious. I'd be curious to hear though, like what was everybody's first kind of collector's edition, if they sort of remember like buying that back in the day. Like, was there one that you guys remember specifically? I know mine. I can think
What's
of mine.
yours?
Go.
Oh, it was Lunar. I picked it up. Actually, my brother and I went in halfsies on it because it was a little expensive, and we thought we were so cool and cultured at the time because, that came out and everybody was in 3D and polygons. And we're like, we're gonna play this old school JRPG. It's sprites and like we felt so cool doing that. And then I bounced off it like immediately. My brother loved it and played it to death, and then I just was like, oh, you could just have it, it's cool. And then cut 2 years later, I'm like, yo, do you still have that Lunar? And he's like, nah, man, I got rid of that a long time ago. I'm like, but yeah, that was it was definitely a Working Designs joint.
Yeah,
was
I'm
the
trying
first
to
experience
remember mine. The earliest one I can think of was Final Fantasy 12, which was just like a steel book.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't anything crazy. And I remember lending it to a friend, and he gave it back to me. And later on, I think I realized that this just happened to a lot of copies of this game. The steelbook was so garbage that it like degraded. Like it looked like it was rusting or something. I was like,
wow,
what the fuck happened to this? But then I saw like other copies had kind of a similar issue, and I was like, I'm sure this is partially his fault, partially like just the quality of this, whatever the steelbook is.
I'm gonna have to look at mine. I have one of those too. It was the only copy they had. They're worth nothing.
They were fucking everywhere.
Yeah,
they were not hard to find.
Yeah, I remember
No.
I picked it up because it was the same price as the regular edition at that point.
Yep.
So
Like, yeah, why wouldn't I get a steelbook in that case?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
I think I'd pre-ordered that game too. That was one of my early pre-orders. That and Dirge Cerberus.
Oh,
God, good
yes.
times.
Oh, amazing. I was so
Fantastic.
happy that you pre-ordered Dirge Cerberus. You were that kid
So
wearing
good.
the duster jacket.
Me and my
the long
friend
hair,
were
you
so excited to play that game. We both got it the same day, and then we got on the phone with each other and started playing it at the same time. Like, just describing
So
to each other
love
what
it.
was happening. And then we shortly found out, like a couple days later, we finished it, and I was like, oh, this game's like 8 hours long or whatever. And I was like, I paid $60 for this. Because then it was like, no, you need to play it again. And I was like, why? No, I don't. sir.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But that was my
man.
first one, yeah.
Kelly, do you remember?
I had Illusion of Gaia, and then of course I had all three
right.
of the Working Designs. So I had Lunar, Lunar 2, and Arc the Lad trilogy. We had one retro game store in town. They had, of course, modern games at that point, but they had the retro games too. But they would always get one copy of these new games, and I was always the one to buy it. So they knew me when I walked in.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Right on.
And Paul, how about you?
I can't even really think of mine, honestly. Like, I was looking around, I kind of, when we were prepping for this episode, I was looking around the game room, and there's just not a lot there, collector's edition wise. The only ones that I really was excited, English, to get were the Persona related ones. So, and this is recent stuff like Persona 5 and Persona Q Part 2. Oh, and Persona Q, the original one as well. I should say that might actually be the first one now that I think about it, because it came with like a really cool carrying case for the DS. I don't know if you guys
sure did.
It's
Persona
nice
Golden on the Vita also came with a really dope carrying case, and that one is like disgustingly expensive.
Oh, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, I don't know. I like the plushes. I like having, little Koromaru from Persona 3 sitting on my desk, right? So
at least somebody's getting some use out of them.
Yeah, exactly, man. I don't know. I like opening them.
Yeah.
You know what I like? I like backpacks. That's what I fucking like.
Oh,
you're the worst.
Are we gonna get started on the fucking backpacks?
I wish every collector's edition just had like 3 backpacks in it.
I should have sold you my
just
my
with the
Danganronpa
finest grade cheap nylon.
Wasn't that you remember the Fallout 76 debacle?
Oh yeah.
I know.
Like,
I didn't
want to give you
I...
these sweet canvas bags that disintegrated upon contact.
Yeah, just this disintegrating nylon bag. And then there's so much good stuff there. The coat, like the bottle of Coke of New Cola.
Yep.
And it was supposed to be this full bottle with the drink in it, but it's like a plastic shell that you have to open up, and you can't even put the shell over it and use it to drink.
Nope.
It's like the canteen, the Call of Duty World War II canteen that you can't actually use.
Yeah,
it's just like a big paperweight. It's so good.
Oh my god!
Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm glad that collector's editions weren't a thing when I was younger, because I absolutely would have forced my mom to buy me so many of them, and she would have banned me from video gaming after buying 2 of them.
Oh, dude, my dad would have roundhouse kicked me if I even suggested something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually slowed down a lot on buying collector's editions because there's just, even with this room, I have no room left for.
Yeah.
I prefer the smaller ones that will actually fit on the shelf versus in anything that has apparel.
Versus Nier Replicant version 17,000.
That was worth it, though. That was worth it,
though.
Yeah.
That's about the size of that fucking Tom Clancy one.
But that's a nice.
Yeah, that is a very nice collection.
Exceptions are made.
Everybody, there's always something that's going to draw you to it, right? Everybody's got if it's got I'm always drawn to a collector's edition if it's got a dope art book, if I really like the character designs and stuff like that. That's always going to be something, or like a steel case, even if it just looks good.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. If it's something really practical, like a backpack, then I'm probably not gonna care. If it's just a big backpack. I'm like, no thanks, I'm good.
I'm sort of the same way. I mean, I used to care about the art books, and then I can't read. I'm illiterate. I like the moving pictures. I'm like, oh wow, this is very pretty. Next. I'm just uncultured, so I don't get it.
The cosplayer in me needed those art books, so it was.
Yeah.
But the stuff Paul's talking about, the if you got a game case, like a console, if you got something to hold my 3DS in, oh shit, now I'm in. 100%.
That's cool.
And the other way that gaming, I've noticed, has definitely changed is, along with collector's editions, even regular games have become somewhat of a collector's edition with the change into limited run games. Now, I'm not talking just the company, I'm talking in general. Limited run games kind of opened the floodgates for these types of games where it was like, hey, there's only 200 or 2,000 copies, be here at this time, order it within 5 minutes or miss out forever. Limited run games themselves has kind of switched away from that model, where now you can pre-order for a few weeks, but still, again, you could miss out very easily if you're not around during those few weeks. But they're far from the only ones doing this. So we've got super rare games, strictly limited games, I Am 8-Bit, Red Art Games, Special Reserve Games, Fangamer, East Asia Soft, and plenty more. These are all ones that I just have personal experience with, but there are plenty more out there. Honestly, I hate this trend. I really do. I understand that, as physical collectors, we kind of expect this to happen because we're there's less and less of us as years go by. More people will just buy digital and be happy with that. But when I was collecting Vita and all these game companies came out, it just became a spreadsheet of, okay, this game is releasing on this day at this time by this company, so I've got to be on the web here. And like every week it was 3 or 4 different releases that I had to try and keep track of. I was honestly relieved when they said, we're not making Vita cartridges anymore, we're done. I was relieved because I was finally free from having to worry about that. But yeah, with the Vita dead, pretty much every now and then I'll get 1 or 2 games per year through limited run games. They did To the Moon recently, which is one of my favorite indie games. So I bought that. But since I don't buy as many Switch games, I don't have to worry about that situation much anymore.
Yeah,
that situation.
And it just with Switch, there's like 3 or 4 times as many of these companies, and they just more and more keep coming out. It's crazy. Has anyone here purchased anything? I mean, limited run games, I think we've all had experience with. Have you had experience with any of these other companies? Arnie, how about you? Have you purchased from any of these?
I have never bought a single game from any one of these companies.
Wow.
I admire you so much.
Not a single
I've never admired you more.
And to me,
I believe it.
And to me, it's been a thing where, like, honestly, I've never cared. Partially because, so for me, what my thinking was always was again, very lazy individual. Like, I'm not gonna show up to a thing and like spend like 30-40 minutes of my life clicking away at a website hoping that I can put something in my cart before it disappears off the face of the earth. Second, like, I know me, and the second I buy one, I need to keep that endorphin up forever. That serotonin burst needs to continue. And I was not financially stable enough when this started becoming a thing that I could afford to do that. And, like, really the most important one for me is that there's more than enough physical shit for me to collect. And at the point we are now, with the way that the gaming community worries about preservation and, like, availability, I'm not as concerned about not being able to play some of these indie games later on down the line as much as I am about some obscure, like, Game Boy game that I could find somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So a lot of these games I've played digitally, and I'm getting a lot more comfortable with playing digital stuff. And I don't know. It's just never been my bag. They've never come out with anything that I've been like, I gotta have it. And they've come close. Like this Knights of the Old Republic one they've got up right now.
Ooh.
I'm still thinking about it.
Will you give it?
That's the closest I've come. Yeah, I'm giving it the once over.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've bought not just from LRG, but I've bought from Red Art, and I think from East Asia Soft as well, and also I Am 8-Bit. I don't like the trend either, much like you, Kelly. It's a weird thing. Like, it seems to me that, and I don't know, guys, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like the cost of your average used Nintendo Switch game, I don't know how it is in the US, but in Canada, I can't find used Switch games. This system has been out now for 4 years. Almost 5 now, actually. And we are now at the point in the console life cycle where you should be able to find $5, $10, $15 games everywhere.
No way.
And you don't. You don't. Like, especially with the Switch. With the PS4, yes, but with the Switch, you don't.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that part of it is because of this mentality that people have now towards these physical games, where it's like, once upon a time we would just trade them in and get the new thing. Now we have these games that are holding their value because of scarcity, and any game now could possibly be the next Code of Princess on the Switch, or Fairy Tale, where they're fetching, or the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 expansion, where they're fetching 3 figures, right? And I think it was around the limited run games point where this started, where modern games started kind of holding their secondary market value. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like that I used to be able to get super cheap used games, and now I can't anymore. It sucks.
Yeah. It's not just you. It's definitely a US thing. And it's not just the Switch. I have been trolling GameStop used games for a decade plus now. And I used to very easily be able to go in, buy $1 games, $5 games, $3 games. There is no, on the PS4, like 1% you'll be able to find for less than $10.
Yeah.
Like that's your new basement price is $10.
Yeah.
On the
$10.
Switch, it's more egregious. Like if you can find something for less than $25, that's a steal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Walmart
Okay.
is coming out with their Black Friday deals for first party Switch titles. And $35 is like, damn, this is like the basement. Like I'm getting Breath of the Wild for $35, a game that came out 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm fucking excited. So yeah, no, it's definitely a market shift. I don't know that it's necessarily just due to these, sort of limited manufacturers. I think the market has just been moving. It's just been trending in that direction. Like GameStop knows that like games are worth more now. So I think it's just a way for them to avoid taking big hits on things like this, where they're like, shit, we could have sold that for $20-$30 instead of, $1. So let's start slowly raising our bottom line on these. And, people keep buying them.
But I think GameStop reacts to the market. GameStop doesn't dictate the market.
No, GameStop does not.
Once upon a time, GameStop is selling PS3 games used for $30 and nobody's buying them. And that's a market mentality situation. So they start putting down the prices, $10, $5. Okay, finally, we're starting to clear some inventory, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the case now, right? Now, people are buying these things for $20-$30 used. It's normalized. And again, I there's never just one reason for a thing happening. But I do see the limited run kind of situation contributing to a mentality where these games are treated more as a commodity than they are as a game.
Yeah, you got to buy it now because if it disappears and it goes up, then you missed out.
Yeah. And it's not, and again, I'm repeating myself here, but it's not just limited run, right? Like any kind of weird JRPG or that poop game for the PS4 that we were talking about on the break, right? Like, we need to get this. I don't know. There's just a mentality to it now.
Yeah, but I mean, who would never do that? Nintendo, right? They'd never put out a physical thing in limited quantities.
Not at all.
They would never do that either.
And they won't reprint either. Like there are companies who will reprint. Like the Fatal Frame series got reprints recently. Nier keeps getting reprints. The Atelier series is getting reprints. Fucking Nintendo will not reprint.
And now you're seeing, because what I was going to say is GameStop has attempted to dictate the market, and that's how Kelly would know about this, how you get things like, the Xenoblade Chronicles for the Wii reprint, the Metroid Prime Trilogy reprint.
It went all the way back to Persona 2 Eternal Punishment on PS1. They did a reprint of that. Opened every single copy, sold them brand new as used for... Well, at that point, it was only $25, and that's when I got it. But,
Yeah, the Xenoblade Chronicles one, I think they tried to sell them for like $80 or something.
Yeah, same thing with the Metroid Prime trilogy. They did that without the Steelbook case.
They did it for Dokapon Kingdom was another one they did it for.
And that one was disc only. And people were still buying it for, but that was a reprint. It was disc only.
Yep, so they've tried to do that before, and I think it is, like you're saying, like they react to these market forces, and the reality is that games are, people want the next game, and now everybody's become their own speculator with their fucking dowsing rods being like, oh, what's the next thing? Oh shit, Nisa just put out another game, gotta buy it on the Switch because it's gonna be an $80 game in 2 weeks, I'm sure. Everyone's as much of a speculator as they are a collector at this point, and it happens whether you care about cost or not. You're gonna do it. because if you want to have the games and you don't want to spend a shit ton of money on them, you have to sort of pick, and you have to be like, okay, I think this one's the one I should get now, and this other one I can put off a little bit, because even if it goes up, it won't go up as much as this one. You know what I mean? Like, it's all become this like fucking gambling now, where we're all sitting in our fucking offices or our bedrooms, like clicking away at computers, being like, what's the next thing I can buy and scoop on a deal and maybe resell for profit and buy some other stuff that I actually want, you know? Because I see that too. I see people buying games they don't even want, because they're like, I can flip this real quick and get some stuff I actually want down the road.
So what you're saying is you enjoy this trend.
I that part of it I despise. But again, like, my thing is that, look at this fucking shit. Like, I have 1,700 games back here. Like, I could not buy a game for the rest of my life and die not having played all of this. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, it's a question of how much time do I want to invest into maybe finding Chris Tales on the like PS4 for $20.
Zero.
As opposed to, you know, playing, I don't know, fucking
Gaia.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Or any one of the, you know, hundreds of games that I own. The cost benefit analysis has never been in the favor of these companies for me.
And Mike, before we head into break, how about you? Have you purchased any of these?
Yeah, I have. I've bought stuff through Limited Run, and I bought stuff through Special Reserve. I also got my first actual... It's funny, you were talking, Arnie, briefly when you mentioned, you know, you don't want to open those floodgates.
Yeah.
For me, that was imports. Like, for me, I was hardcore North America only, not because I don't want imports, but because if I open that up, I don't know when it's going to end.
Yeah.
And I actually bought my first import title, which was Vambrace Cold Soul, through another one of these limited run type places called Game Fairy. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about them. I have kind of mixed feelings about it. I mean, one thing I do not have mixed feelings about is that these are companies and they're trying to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, like, this is not...
Of course.
There is no belief here in my mind that, you know, maybe a couple of them are kind of doing it because they like, you know, they care about video game preservation or about physical media. But, like, it's as far as I could throw it, you know, like it's just, they want to just make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And for me, if there's something that I think looks cool and that I want to play, I try to support the stuff that's not, you know, maybe the stuff that's a little bit weirder that I want to check out, like stuff like Hero Must Die Again. Yep. You know, these weird titles that wouldn't normally get a shot. And I'm kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like, let's check that out. But I mean, yeah, I have no illusions about these guys doing it for any other reason than to make money. I think that, you know, some places are better than others. Special Reserve, I have to be honest, like, I think the quality is excellent. Like, it definitely feels worth what you're paying for it. And they got really nice, you know, UI and graphic design. Stuff like Limited Run, I feel like it maybe used to be better. Now I feel like they're trying to gouge you on the special editions by making the normal editions so basic. And it felt way less tiered before, and now it just feels like you can either get this or this, you know, like way down here. And it's just that
cycles,
kind of shit.
Man. It's there now, you know, where AAA gaming was what we were just talking about, like, you know, 10, 15 years ago.
It's
and
true.
Like, to be clear, no shade to anybody who buys stuff from this. Like,
oh yeah,
if you
100%.
want it, go get it. If you get your bag, however you want to do it, I don't care. And if they're offering a service and people want to use that service, more power to you. Like, fucking kill it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I've bought a lot of stuff through them. I'll be honest, and you know, but it's because I dig the games. I like having the physical games. I like the art and the layouts. And I'll be honest, most of the time I just get the standard edition. I only got the limited edition once for Streets of Rage 4. I think none of us need to hear about how that shit went. And I'm not super stoked about it. I you know, it's anyway, but other than that, like, you know, I think sometimes you do get what you pay for and it's not that extravagant. Again, not to tout Special Reserve, but, you know, I actually think their stuff is pretty solid. And I think there's just a level of it that you can kind of get away with and it still ends up being okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of comes out in the wash with how the market is going and prices are going because of COVID and like what's going to happen with this physical stuff. Because for me, it's always just been, hey, I like having physical games. These games are cool. The cases look neat. It's like, that's as far as it goes. It's not, for me, it's never been about, I need to get all of them in. I need to get every single one in the run, or, oh, you know, like it's never been about that. It's always just been, oh, that looks cool. Maybe I'll check that one out. And there's no brand loyalty, I guess is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really understand people who I feel like they're trying to build up this image of themselves as these warriors for physical media and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, you just make the game and I buy it. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not that deep, bro.
Yeah, it's not that deep. So it's going to be interesting to see if it even lasts or if there's going to be others that take their place or how that's going to work, because it's already becoming redundant. Like we've already talked about, they're already doing re-releases. So it's like, okay, so I guess it's not a limited run. I guess it's not, you know, like limited, like, you know, they're coming out with different versions on, you know, ports to different consoles and things like that. So it's just weird. To me, the only thing that really bums me out is, like I said, it just feels kind of greasy sometimes when they kind of pander to that idea about, you know, we're these warriors for video game preservation. That's kind of when it rubs me the wrong way. And I just feel like, you know what, guys, just knock it off. Make cool shit. People will buy the cool shit. Mm-hmm. You know, whales are going to be whales and they're going to buy everything anyway. But I don't know. You don't have to be a dick about it.
Yeah, well, I think these companies are here to stay. They're making a lot of money, but
I agree.
I think it's time we take a break, and when we get back, we'll get to everyone's, I'm sure, favorite topic of sealed games, of course. We'll see you after the break. All right, and we are back. Now, during the break, we decided that sealed games, WADA-graded games, they deserve their own episode. We'll be here all night if we were going to be talking about them. So we're going to save that conversation for another day, and instead we're just going to start talking about personal experiences that we've had with collecting, how we've seen it change over the years, just all the differences, and just kind of reminisce about the great days of game collecting. So, Arnie, we'll start with you tonight. Let's give us some memories that you've got.
Goddamn, some memories. I mean, you've seen one fungus-encrusted, like, plastic bag full of video games at the flea market. You've seen them all, right?
Right. We call them Arnie specials.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what it is about people who are like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go to this flea market and I'm going to bring my video games. Let me just dump them in this bag full of all my old cigarette butts and fucking like day old sandwiches and like put it out there. Like
my armpits are feeling a little wet. Let me grab a game.
Yeah, let me
dry myself
grab
off.
it up with this NES game real quick. Fucking
I was at
animal.
a GameStop and I almost bought like a Pro controller, and it was like a used one, and there was like something bouncing around in like the bag that they had the controller in, and I was like, what the fuck? And it was like tough, like it had dried out, and when I actually opened it up, it was cheese. It was shredded cheese. Like, and I was like, and I went up to the cash and I was like, the fuck is this? And he was like, oh, dude, I don't know. I don't know how that got in there. I was like, you guys put it in the bag? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like,
he's doing it on lunch.
He was like, well, it's only $10. You want it? I'm like, no, I don't want your cheese Pro controller. Like, I swear to God, man, it was disgusting. It was like, I was like, this is like fajita cheese, man. It was like a Kraft, you know, the shit you pour on your Mexicali mix and shit. I was like, dude, this is brutal. So
I was prepared for so many things. I was like roaches, fucking cigarettes.
You could have said butt plug and I would have been less surprised.
Yeah. Just grated cheese, man. So like, I'm just saying, we were.
So I'm just imagining like some guy has.
We were
talking
about grody bags. We were talking about grody bags. So I was like, all right, I got a grody bag story, and I had to jump on it.
Some guy sitting in his house, like, man, I really gotta top off these fucking tacos with some queso fresco, and he's like, oh fuck, my grater's in the washer. Shit, let me grab this Pro Controller and just smash this cheese into it.
I was picturing it where, like, he's at home and he's like, oh man, this fucking taco's delicious. Bro, remember to take this bag of all these used video game merchandise to our GameStop. Crunch. Big crunch. And it was like, perfect, I'll be there. How much do they give you? Oh, $5. Cool, you know. But anyway, I didn't buy it.
Oh, thank God. You should have bought it just for the story.
Oh,
just
God,
to take a picture.
No, I don't think it was worth it for the story even. No.
I would have bought it, taken a picture of it, thrown it in the garbage, and put it on Instagram.
So anyway, sorry, Arnie.
No, I mean... I've never, thankfully, you know, honestly, I've never had like a really disgusting thing. And I bought consoles, like games, controllers, never found, like I see people be like, oh yeah, I found like I said, like bugs inside my N64 or something. Never.
Oh yeah, dude, I've found bugs inside of systems before. What fascinates me is how Ozzy shows us multiple pictures of moldy games.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
okay, we're going there. I like it.
What is going on here? Does he live in the Everglades? Like, what the hell?
He's just pulling games out of the swamp.
Guys, should I throw this away?
He's on Mercari. He's on Mercari, and the guy's like, you could pick it up next to the bayou. He just comes down.
Like brand new condition. That's my favorite fucking shit. This is why I don't buy online stuff. I don't trust people. I've seen enough fucking like front facing camera videos of some guy being like, I ordered Suikoden 2 and this motherfucker sent it in like a letter envelope with no padding. Like,
oh my God,
I don't trust anybody to do any of that shit.
A lot of people have a very liberal interpretation of the word mint.
It's true. It's true.
But no, I mean, for me, like a lot of the stories that I remember are just like the places and times that I find things. Like the price is sometimes good, sometimes bad, irrelevant. The most relevant factor is, who did I buy this from? Did they look insane? Where did I buy it? And most of the time I remember, like the one I remember a lot is I was at, I used to go to this monthly flea market when I was in Virginia that was open like 8 out of 12 months because eventually it gets too cold and nobody wants to sit in like a tiered parking lot, when it's like 2 degrees outside.
Sure.
But I remember this one guy, that I'll always remember him because his pricing was just bananas.
Yeah.
I was like, it was early in the morning. It's like 5:30 or something. I get to this place. I'm walking around. It's like kind of dark, so I have to have my little flashlight on my phone. And I stumble across this guy's table, and I'm like, oh, look at this, some Nintendo stuff, blah blah. Gunstar Heroes. I'm like, oh shit, I want Gunstar Heroes.
Sure.
And I'm like,
everybody does.
I don't want to hold up I try never to hold up like one game and ask like, what's the price on this? I usually pick up like 2 or 3 and I'm like, what do you want for the games?
Ryan said.
And usually people give me like a price, like $5 a piece or whatever. And so with this guy, I was like, oh, what do you want for these? And he's like, well, it depends on which one. And so I show him Gunstar. And he's like, $5. And I'm like, automatic, like done.
Sure.
And
I
showed him Donkey Kong on the NES. And he was like, $8. And I was like, all right, still do it. Good. And then I see Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, a game that I'm not even really interested in. But at this point, I'm like, maybe I can get all 3 of these and like we'll do a bundle or something. And I'm like, how much for this? He's like, $25. And I'm like, why? Like, what possible, like, there's no Mario on here. Like, if it was like Mario Brothers 1, at least I could be like, okay, this is like a recognizable character that like everybody is like, oh yeah, it's Mario, it's gotta be worth money. This is like such a random game. But that's like my favorite part sometimes too, when you're just like, you just come to this realization, because whenever I approach somebody, I always come in thinking that they know just as much as I do or more as a defense mechanism for myself.
Yes,
and when they prove to me that they don't, it's almost always incredibly entertaining.
Yes.
And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes people are like, I want like $37 for each of these games. And I'm like, what if I put like 3 of them? I don't give a shit. Like, I want, whatever. They're like very firm. But when people are just like willing to like go back and forth with you, you find like the most interesting mental quirks where they can't even explain it. They're just like pointing at things and saying numbers at a certain point. Like, they don't give a shit. But it's stuff like that. I remember the most famous story that I think I've told on the podcast before, but I can't remember, was when I got my Cubivore. Which was, I was driving around, I'd hit a bunch of garage sales and found nothing. Just like one of those days where I'm like, why do I do this to myself? Like, I could have done so many things. I could have learned to read. I could have picked up cooking. I could have
laundry. Laundry.
I could have literally smashed my head into a wall. Like, I could have done any number of things. I could have watched the Bills. Like anything that's not this. And so I have to go pick somebody up from an appointment, and on the way, I see on my little app that there is a garage sale, like, on the way there. And I'm like, do I stop?
Wait, you have an app that detects
Yeah, I actually have. I have like a little garage sale app that'll tell you like all the garage sales in your area. Like, usually it aggregates from like different websites and stuff.
Oh, I thought it used like spy satellites and looked in people's yards.
No. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, here's all the Craigslist ads that you could have gone to Craigslist for, but we put it in like a map format so you can just click on it and like see the ad instead of having to scroll through. And there was this one that was like right on my way, and I was like, do I stop? Do I not stop? Like, this day's been shit. Like, do I want to go to a place, not find anything, and make my day more shit? Or do I want to like just keep on trucking with my life? But of course, like, like Mike, what if I find stadium events? What if I find, Nintendo World Championships or something? God forbid. And so I pull up and immediately like looking like garbage, like baby shit, like, I mean, like baby toys, like cribs.
No, they're selling little shit, right?
Yes, like they have like an infant that's turned into a toddler.
In a baggie with a
we
Pro
can get rid of
Controller.
all this garbage. And I'm like, all right, this looks like shit. So I'm like, all right, I've already stopped. I'm just going to commit and just ask the guy, because I always ask the guy, or whoever is sitting out there. I'm always like, all right. So I go up to this woman and I'm like, hey, this is a weird question. Do you guys have like any video game stuff? And she's like, turns to her husband. She's like, do we have any video games? Like, I know you had something. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Like, he's hemming and hawing. He's like, let me go check. And he goes inside. He comes back out. And he's fucking holding Chibi Robo and Cubivore on the GameCube. And this was like 4 years ago. And I was like, I know these are not cheap. I don't know what they're actually
he didn't
worth.
even know. He didn't know. He didn't know.
I did not.
He was just like,
I was like, I know they're worth more than like $30-$40. That's what I knew. And again,
God damn it.
In my mind, what's my defense mechanism? This guy knows as much as I do about this shit. Like, I have to, I go in assuming that every single time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you want for it? And he gives me my least favorite fucking answer. So immediately his karma point is like negative, where he's like, I don't know, make me an offer. I'm like, fuck you. Fuck you. This is a no-win situation for me. This is 0%. My chance of win is 0 now. Because I either lowball you and you tell me to go fuck myself, or you accept and I feel like shit, or I give you a price that I think is fair and you immediately accept, and now I'm like, fuck, did I overpay for this? Because I don't know what it's actually worth.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm going to give this guy a fucking offer that he is absolutely not going to take. And I'm like, I'll give you like $5 each. And he's like, he looks at it and he's like, all right. And I'm like, you piece of shit. You fucker. And so he gives me the thing, and then he's like, oh shit, and then he went back inside, and I was like I was still looking through other stuff, and he comes back out, he's like, actually, I found some other stuff, and he brought out it was like an extreme green N64 controller, again, like not super cheap, and some PS1 game, and like Worms on the GameCube, like more normal shit. And he's like, will you do like these for like $15 or something? And I was like, I kind of don't want this stuff, but I'm going to buy it because
of course you are.
I've already fucked you over. Like I don't need to do this to you again. And so I bought all the shit. I left. And then when I got home, I looked up Cube of War. Of course, it's like a $400 game. And I'm like, great. Now I get to feel fucking, I mean, I was happy. I was like, this is awesome. But that guy ended up getting his revenge on me later on because I gave him my number. And a year later, he texts me out of fucking nowhere. He's like, oh, right. Hey, are you the video game guy? And I'm like, yeah, I think I remember you.
A video game guy.
And he's like, yeah, I found some other stuff that he had mentioned to me at the garage sale. He had mentioned to me that he had a TurboGrafx 16 when he was a kid. Oh, and I was like, do you have that? And he's like, I don't know where it is. And so a year later, he texts me. He's like, I have it. Do you want to come look at it? And I go, and he has a loose TurboGrafx with 2 controllers, and then he has another TurboGrafx in the box.
Jesus.
Like, with everything in plastic bags. And his story for this was fucking great. He was like, my dad got this when it was, like, super on clearance. And when he realized it only had 1 controller, he bought a second one in case one of the controllers ever broke. Perfect. And so me and my brother could play.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
And then he also had a Turbo Express. And he had like 5 or 6 games with it. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, what the fuck does he want for all this? And he was like, I can't remember what I offered. I think I offered him like $350 or something. He was like, I could do $550. And I was like, sold, like, immediately. Because the box TurboGrafx is worth the $550 by itself. Like, easily.
Now,
Arnie,
sure, yeah.
when he first called Arnie, and he was like, yeah, I got some more video games for you, Mr. Video Game Guy. Like, was there a part of you that thought, oh shit, man,
did you bring someone with you?
Like, he found out.
100%.
He's going to kick my ass.
100%. I thought there was definitely a moment where I was like, he knows that I fucked him so hard on this. And I'm going to show up to this guy's house and he is going to kill me.
Well, at least...
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, hey, where's the TurboGrafx? He's going to be like, oh.
And as he comes up behind me with a fucking garrote to like kill me. Yeah. Yes, I definitely thought that was going to happen. But thankfully we made a deal and it was all good. That's probably the biggest like successful score I've ever had. That I can remember.
I've never had success with garage sales before, so to the point where, like now, I'm like, it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, way too late now.
Paul, how about you? What are your best remembrances of deals that you've gotten through video games?
I don't remember. I mean, I've definitely got deals. Like, there's no question, but I don't know the fun stuff that I have from shopping usually involves going to a store and I don't know, it sounds kind of lame, but like, you know, chatting with the people and so on, or finding out a game existed that I didn't know existed.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we were at Retro Game Bros, Mike, I think one day, and I found out that there was and this is a deep cut, a Daisen Ryaku 7 for the PS2.
Yep, I own it.
Yeah, I had no idea it existed. Now, for those of you who don't know, Daisen Ryaku is a military strategy game. Originally, there was one on the Sega Saturn, which was released here as Iron Storm. And I have Iron Storm for the Saturn. I loved Iron Storm for the Saturn. And then I never saw one of those kind of games again. And there it was, Daisen Ryaku 7 for $10. And I'm like, yes, it made my day, man. It made my day. I bought a few other things that day. I think I had like a nice copy of Street Fighter 2 for the SNES that I'd always wanted and stuff like that. But like that $10 obscure war game for the PS2 was fun. And just randomly also finding a game that I never thought I'd find for a reasonable price, which was Battle Outrun for the Sega Master System. I loved that game when I was a kid. I rented it a few times, loved it. Never thought I'd see it again. And lo and behold, it was at a store just there on the Master System shelf with a whole bunch of other games. And it was $30. And I'm like, hell yeah, man. $30, I'll buy Battle Outrun. That's not even a question. So yeah, I don't know. I like finding stuff like that.
And Mike, you gave us your cheesy controller story, but any other?
Yeah, Kelly, why don't you tell us yours? Like, don't you have any like good memories of buying something at a store?
No, she's always been miserable every time she's had to hand over a credit card. She's like, this shit.
Mine are all, honestly, a lot of mine came from GameStop of all places. Just because I used to be on Cheap Ass Gamer pretty much hours. Like, I'd have the website up from when I woke up to when I went to sleep, constantly refreshing just to see what they had to say. And they were the ones that let me know about the Persona 2 Eternal Punishment being restocked and put into the GameStops. At the same time, Rhapsody was also at the same time. They did the same thing with. And one time when I was in there picking up a pre-order game, it was a PS2 game, and they were getting ready to clear out all their PS1 games at the time. And the guy that was behind the counter saw me picking up a pre-order RPG. He was like, hey, you've got to check out what we just got in. And he went to the back, came back, and it was like Tales of Destiny 2 and Valkyrie Profile.
Oh, wow.
And they were mint condition. These things had not a scratch on it. He's like, can you believe this? There's no scratches on any of these discs or anything else. It was like they just opened the plastic and just
Meanwhile, Kelly's jumping over the counter, like, trying to grab them.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, how much? And I was like, this one's 25, and I think in Valkyrie Profile was 34.
I can't wait to tell my story after this.
So I definitely picked both of those ones up. And I do have a big miss from GameStop as well. I'd probably say for about a year. There was one GameStop that was in a mall that was about 45 minutes from home. And every time we would go there, I'd go into GameStop, and sitting on the shelf was Suikoden 2, $34.99. And I was like, I kind of want that game because a couple of my friends had told me how good it is, but this other game just looks more interesting today. And I'd take it home. Month later, go back, same thing. It's like, oh, it's still there. But this other game looks more interesting. Take it home. And that game sat there for at least a year, I would say. And finally, the price started going up, and I went back, and I was like, shit, it's gone. So to this day, Suikoden 2 is one of the games I do not have in my collection because I just got priced out of it.
Oh, for sure.
I remember Cheap Ass Gamer for one thing. I was on, because I would check it at work all the time. And when the Retron 5 had like come out, for some reason Urban Outfitters was selling it, but I guess it didn't do very well there, so they were blowing them out for $40. And I found an Urban Outfitters in DC, which meant that I had to take a train and walk to an Urban Outfitters. I got either the last one or the second to last one they had for $40. And then I had to lug it all the way home. But I was so happy because they were like, what were they, like $250, like when they came out brand new, something like that. They were expensive. And I very much enjoyed it. Mostly used it for Game Boy Advance stuff, so I didn't have to buy a Game Boy player.
Yeah.
But that was fun. And I mean, the other thing was going to different places. Like whenever I went somewhere new, I wanted to go to like the local GameStop or whatever. I remember when in Puerto Rico, we kept our PS2 games around a lot longer than the States stores did. And that's when I started getting into, like, when I got into Shin Megami Tensei, I was able to find Persona 4, found Persona 3, Shin Megami 3 Nocturne, Steambot Chronicles, Devil Summoner 1 and 2, like all these crazy JRPGs. Suikoden 5 I got, Star Ocean Till the End of Time, like a bunch of these for like 10, 15, 20 bucks a piece.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Nice. Yeah, very.
Those were them days. So Mike, what's your non-cheese related story?
Oh man. So I mean, you know, kind of akin to what Paul was saying, like for me the fun, I mean, you guys are already just kind of echoing the chorus here, but it's fun to check out new places. You know, anytime I'm somewhere new, I'm like, oh man, is there some shops I can go to? Yep. And I'll just go check that out. It's fun to, you know, check out games and like see games that I've never seen before. Like that's how I found so many random games. I'd just be looking through and I'd be like, yo, what is that? Like, I don't even know what that is. Or just being reminded, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. Like Operation Darkness was at Retro Game Bros. At Retro Game Bros because I completely forgot about it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the one about the Nazis, the vampire Nazis fighting the allied werewolves.
And Mike's just yelling at the top of his lungs. Yeah. I found the Nazis over here. I mean,
it's that like part of the fun for me is going, I mean, Retro Game Bros was special because that was where that was the first shop I went to, and that was where I did my first big splurge. And so I actually became pretty tight with the guys who worked there, and I would always go back regularly.
Yeah.
But what was so funny is that, you know, I just like quick shot, like some funny memories. Like I love, you know, going into these shops, and I love the moment when you start looking behind the glass and I'm kind of like, hey, can I take a look at a couple things? And they're kind of like, oh, yeah, sure. You know, because they're always, at first, if they don't know you, they're always like, oh, geez, man, I'm going to take it out for this guy, and he's going to offer me $10 for it or something. And I'll always go like, and then be like, what do you want to look for? And I'd be like, can you take out Thousand Arms for the PSX? Do you guys have like, and I'll just start saying stuff, and it's like they're in the Old West, and they're like, oh, I'll go get the good stuff. And, you know, they take out the keys, and they're like, you know, like, here you go. And they like bring it out. And that's always fun. Like, it's always fun to be there to talk about that stuff when other people go, oh my God, like I've never heard of this, or, oh dude, what's this game? Or oh dude, I love that game. And like, you just start talking with the people who work there, and you get those vibes. Like that's the funnest thing. Like, I don't want to say out loud how much I paid to get Valkyrie Profile and Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. It was a lot, and it was, I mean, let me put it this way. It was so much that when I called up Valkyrie Profile, Persona 2 happened just because I went in and I saw it. But Valkyrie Profile was premeditated. This place had it on their Instagram. I literally called them. I was like, do you still have it? They're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm coming over. They're like, okay, you know, and I got there and I was masked up, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm here about Valkyrie Profile. They're like, oh, and they're like, shoom,
they gave you a
pull
fucking
it out of like the glass
case.
Pull it out of the glass case. So they got it. They're wearing gloves, and they like put it down. And I was like, do you mind if I look at it? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, no, like, of course, you know, like for sure, please. And then it was so great because I go to open it, and they're like, is it okay if we look at it too? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so we're all sitting there, we're like, oh my God, it's cherry, man. Like the manual's so crisp, and we're like flipping through it. They're like, dude, this game is sick. Like, oh, this is awesome. Like, man, it's so cool you're buying this. And I was like, whoa, not sure I'm buying it yet. I was like, I'm just kidding. I'm totally gonna fucking buy it. And they're like, all right. So that was always fun. But I think like the two dumbest things really quick. One was when I ordered Suikoden on eBay and I got it, and I was flipping through the manual, and was kind of like, oh, look, I'm getting information on characters and stuff. This is cool. And, you know, I just read the manuals quick, but I don't want to read too much because I don't want to get too much spoilers. So I'm flipping through, and then all of a sudden I see this guy started writing in pencil in the manual. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. Like, he's like taking notes. Oh, that's kind of fun. And then I noticed that he starts writing next to all the characters, alive, dies, betrays, dies, and I'm like, you son of a... I was like, what? Why would you do that? Like, why would you? You know, that's what I love, is like getting these other stories.
Yeah.
Like you open up a clamshell and someone put their high scores, or someone wrote all their passwords at the back of the manual. And
when you find the receipt in the case,
Oh, I found a receipt and it
Goddamn.
had. I found a receipt one time and it had Rhapsody for $12 on PS1. And I was like, come on. But I love, the last thing I'll say is Master System is, you know, one of the only classic consoles that I insist on KIB, like always complete in box.
Yeah.
And I went to this one shop and I was like, yo, man, you got a lot of Master System. He's like, yeah. And he kind of looked a little hesitant. And I was like, can I take a look? He's like, sure. And so I start looking through them and I'm like, oh, this one, I'm like, this one has like, you know, in big Sharpie, this guy's name, I'm just going to make it up, like property of Peter, like written on the front. I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. He's like, yeah, it's funny. And then I'm like, oh, this one has it too. He's like, yep. And then I'm like, this one does too? He's like, and basically the entire collection had that on the cover. But this is the best part. It was on the inlet. It wasn't on the plastic.
Hell yeah,
Oh my
dude.
He wrote it
God.
on the
Oh,
cover.
yeah.
I open and then I open it.
Well,
hang on.
Mike,
Hang on.
if somebody stole it from him, they could just
Yeah.
switch the inlay to another case, and then
It's
nobody
true.
would
That's
know
fair.
that it was the
I guess
property of
that's-
Peter.
I guess that's fair, Peter. And then I open it and Peter has written it on the manual. And but on top of that, you know what else Peter did? Just to make sure?
Oh, God.
He carved with a box cutter on the case and on the cart. Okay, so picture the Master System cart with the black and the red label. It just says Peter.
Dude,
Carved with a box cutter. And I was
the
this
only
close
conclusion
to
I
buying.
can come to is that Peter was in prison with a Master System. That's the only conclusion I can draw.
Bro,
I was
Peter's
this
OPSEC
close.
is fucking so tight. Like, fuck
I
your
was
two-factor authentication shit. Like, Peter is next level.
I know. I was like, I almost bought one just to have it, but I was like, I don't know if I could do it. And he's like, I know. And the guy at the store was like, I know. That's why I keep them on the top shelf. I'm like, bro, I don't know who's going to buy them. It's not going to be me. But yeah. Anyway, that's all
Those
I
were
got.
those were some great stories.
Ugh.
And I think we'll take a break here. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the future of our collecting.
Yay.
All right, and we are back with our collecting episode here, taking it home, talking about the future of collecting, where we see it now, where we see it heading in the future. I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely noticed changes over the years. Recently, it used to be like 5 years ago, I could head into my local retro store. I could find JRPGs everywhere on the shelf for cheap prices. Especially PS2 games. PS2 games definitely have skyrocketed in the last few years.
Yep.
But it just seems like now, when I go into these same retro stores, everything is locked up. JRPGs, just anything of any value whatsoever. The stores are just filled with the sports games on the shelves. Everything seems to be picked clean. When I go to Goodwill or anywhere else, it seems like everyone has their phones out checking eBay prices to see if what they're getting in store is a good deal. It just seems like so many more people are getting into gaming, collecting, even if they may not have been a gamer in the past. They see what's happening online with games selling for millions of dollars and they think, hey, I want a piece of that too. Have you guys noticed this in the store, Paul? What have you seen the past couple years?
I've seen a lack of games that are in good condition more than anything else. Selection seems to be not too bad, and some stores, it just seems like the really good stuff gets bought up immediately. I think that's my biggest complaint, really. So, and of course prices, right? Like prices have gone up. I mean, and then the question is why, right? Like, why are these prices going up so much? Like, I think we're all in agreement. The pandemic is a huge reason, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bizarre. Like, it just feels like our governments are driving up the price of retro games. Like through the various stimulus packages and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's bizarre, man. It's bizarre. And it's weird that it's not just retro games. I know I'm kind of like going on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's weird that it's not just retro games. Like I've mentioned this to you guys before, like basketball cards, football cards, all these collectibles. Then you have like the NFT situation, which is even more insane. I don't know what it is that is driving people to put their investment dollars in goods instead of something traditional like mutual funds and stocks and stuff like that.
I can tell you what it is.
Please tell me.
But it's fucking like it's so easy. You know, now I'm
feeling dumb, so this better be good.
Let's say if I'm growing up now, right? I'm a millennial. I'm stuck in, or whoever, it doesn't even matter. But if I'm stuck in some minimum wage job where I'm making minimum money, I can barely afford to pay my rent and cover my expenses, right? Am I more likely to hop on Coinbase or fucking Binance Exchange or whatever the fuck and invest my meager savings into Shiba Coin or fucking Doge or whatever, thinking that it's gonna increase, I could double or triple it in like 2 to 3 weeks time, sometimes even shorter than that, and take the risk that I can just sell high? As opposed to like, I gotta go to a bank, I gotta fucking start investing in the stock market, and then I've gotta let that money sit there for months, years, so I can see like a minimal return on my investment. Why would I do that? I need that money. And so it's like, if I can double, triple, quadruple my money buying fucking meme stock that Reddit tells me is gonna fucking go to the moon, sure, I'll fucking do that shit. Like, because it's easy. Like, it's not, especially with like all the apps and stuff now, like if I can sign up for Robinhood today and just start investing immediately, that's much easier and takes so much less planning and understanding than like, actually planning out a financial future. Like these systems, I think, aren't as favorable to people coming up now as they are to more established individuals who maybe have like other assets that they can sort of leverage to create that sort of wealth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think crypto and to an extent fucking NFTs, which I hate, are just that sort of quick cash out that a lot of people want. Like, nobody wants to be stuck in a situation where you're fucking living paycheck to paycheck. And this has just sort of become like the new generation's idea of like a quick in and out, cash out. Like, I can take myself from this lot in life to something completely different in the span of a few months.
And sadly now it's our beloved video games that are kind of being the prop that are used in this idea.
Yeah.
Do you think it's, I don't know, Kelly, like, do you think this is sustainable? Like, is this just going to keep going? What? I'm hoping not, even though it's bizarre how we're all sitting on these thousands of dollars worth of games whose prices keep going up. And yet, personally, I would prefer that it just crashes. Like, I don't know. Do you think it's sustainable?
I think it's pricing too many new people out. I mean, if you don't, trying to get into retro gaming collecting right now is ridiculous. There are no cheap games. What's really surprising to me too is even modern games. When I was first collecting, I never thought that PS3 or PS4 games would be worth all that much just because of all the day one patches and everything else that you have to go online to download and get to get the game to be playable, because if those systems go offline, those games are pretty much worthless. So I never thought I'd see a PlayStation 4 game worth $150, yet here we are. Blue Reflection is going up in price. You've got Crystar over $100 too, and it's just like,
Godzilla is like
why?
Yep,
hundreds.
Godzilla's another big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't understand how it can be sustained over time. Plus, if PlayStation, let's face it, with what's going on with the Vita store right now in Europe, if you haven't heard, in Europe, it hasn't been working for the past week, except for in England. Everywhere else in Europe, it's not working.
Wow.
So PlayStation is basically saying, we don't care about the Vita anymore.
Absolutely.
When are they going to start doing that with the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4? Mm-hmm. Will these games be worthless at that point, and will everyone's collections just crash in price? I don't know.
That's a great question. Yeah. Like if you're not able to patch these games, then what's the point of having the physical copy, right? If your PS4 is saying, "Hey, you need to patch this," but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't know. At that point, we're kind of speculating. Maybe they will continue to, as a contractual obligation, so to speak, with the consumer. Maybe they will continue to have servers and resources available for us to patch these games that we've. Arnie's shaking his head, and I agree.
I think what's going to happen is,
but...
I think what's going to happen more realistically is what we've seen already happen in a lot of scenarios like this, is that they'll just let it die, and people like on their own who are actually dedicated to this stuff and like the games and care about that stuff will independently develop workarounds and solutions to that stuff. Yeah. That's what I think is inevitably going to happen, where like people always, MMOs die, people put up private servers and keep games going long past their expiration dates company wise. This is a little more complicated. Like, I don't know, but obviously people more intelligent than me will try to sort that out for sure.
Sure. But I guess that's a problem for, 5, 10 years from now. And
right.
us, right?
Yeah.
Future us. Yeah. But I'm hoping they'll keep going, because there's still a lot of, let's face it, I'm not buying too many more new games right now, so hopefully I can get to that backlog in 20, 30 years, play some of those games. But that's another thing I've noticed, that I haven't been, I don't go to retro stores much anymore because of what's going on. I walk in, it's like, wow, there's 15 copies of Madden and FIFA, and everything is priced out. So I just leave. I think the last good deal I got at a retro store was on a strategy guide, the Final Fantasy X-2 remaster strategy guide. And at that point, I think they just weren't looking at strategy guides to see how much they were worth. Yeah. But I've since gone in again, and they've priced them properly. So they definitely...
They're starting to catch on with the guides.
Yeah, so everything is just eBay prices, and it's just sad to me. Mike, have you seen anything recently?
For me, I mean, it's exactly like you guys are saying, like the people checking stuff on their phones. Man, I mean, I'll admit it, I do it too. Sure. I'll be in there and I'll be double checking what's going on in price charting for something if I'm not sure, and it's kind of, I think it's similar to what you guys have been saying, and also that for me, I kind of see myself, what I end up doing now when I go to retro shops, I still enjoy going, and generally what I'm trying to do, and luckily this is kind of fun for me, is I try to find just stuff that is worth nothing, or stuff that's weird or really off the beaten path that hasn't been deemed a hidden gem by some YouTuber or something yet. And I try to find that stuff, and generally I still find some stuff that I'm willing to pay, and that's not anything extravagant, like in between 5, 10, 15 bucks. But I think you bring up a really good point, because when it comes to a lot of the stuff that people are going to really want when they're starting their collection, or games that really mean a lot to them, chances are it's going to be something that they're way priced out of. And it's so difficult to justify sort of going for that unless you're really, really into it, especially when digital is such a solid option. I just, I still buy a ton of games digitally. If I can buy physically, I do. But, to me, it makes perfect sense to start buying more games digitally, especially when you've already got like a massive backlog of physical stuff already.
Yeah.
So I just, I think like you guys, I want to believe it's going to go down. I'd love for it to crash completely. Like, yeah, absolutely. But I I don't know. I think if it does, I think some titles might kind of fluctuate and go up and down, but it's not going to be the ones anybody cares about. The ones that, unless you're weird like me, but or like us sometimes. But like when it comes to the stuff that everybody wants and the stuff that's already up there, it's not going down. Like it's just not.
Yeah, I think in some ways the pandemic just hurried things along.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
I could see some of these games getting to the prices they are now, like 5 or 10 years from now, if things would have just stayed at the pace that it was. But it just seems like the pandemic is everyone trying to hit their nostalgia, have something to do. Games and even generations of games just went up in price so quickly. PS2, PS3 games being the era. It seems like now if you want to get into collecting, the best way to go would be with Xbox, because for some reason no one seems to want to collect Xbox, even though I still think it's a solid system myself.
It's a little bit weird in that way. I don't know what the deal is with people in the Xbox and the Xbox games not being worth as much. But it is what it is. And I agree. If you want to play some of these old games and you want to have something physical, the Xbox is definitely the way to go, for sure. Isn't that funny, eh? Like, because I agree with you, Kelly. Like, I think a lot of this too, like you were saying, people during the pandemic not having stuff to do. And then, well, I'll play some video games. Hey, I remember this video game from when I was a kid in 2002. Maybe I'll go pick that up. And then you have thousands of people thinking the same thing.
Yep.
And then that feeds, and it just kind of creates this circle of like, wow, that's suddenly there's a lot of demand, and then speculators jump in, and it just kind of feeds itself. It's very interesting. I will say that it's very interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny too, considering of the three major players, physical Xbox games are probably the most viable to still play.
I know,
given
right?
that Microsoft has really pushed the backwards compatibility more than anybody else in the space. But I think like everything, it goes in cycles, right? Like we've seen NES peak and sort of regress. We've seen Super Nintendo peak and sort of regress. GameCube is really at that place right now where, like, and when I say regress, I don't mean like go back to nothing. Like it's still high, but it's not what it was at its peak. GameCube
depends on the game.
One.
It depends on the game.
I mean, that's like with anything else, there's definitely going to be some collectibles that retain their value more than anything else. I can tell you, like, Contra was a game that at one point was definitely like $60, $50. Now it's like a $35 game again. Obviously, Little Samson is a game that's still fucking appreciating in value.
Right.
But you'll see, there's ebbs and flows to all of this. And so I think as a collector, if you're getting it now, it just depends on what you want to collect for. What I've seen a lot of people do is just sort of sell off and specialize. People being like, I want to collect for this system, or I want to collect this subset, I want to collect this genre. And that's how they're able to sort of stay in the game, by limiting the amount of things they have to buy. So when they make purchases that are more expensive, it's not, the end of the world.
If you want to build a Wii collection, or even like sort of a NES collection, you can still build a really solid library on a budget. Like of like 15 and under, you can still build something solid. The issue is like when it comes to, again, like there's specific titles where all of a sudden it just explodes and it kind of stays there, or specific consoles where it's just like, okay, that's a dead zone right now, dude. Like just don't even bother.
DS right now.
It's kind of, that's what I find sort of really fascinating, and like the cyclical nature of it, because like, for a while I wasn't looking at Wii stuff at all, and now I kind of am, and it's like, oh, you find some cool new shit or whatever. But
the other thing I was going to say, honestly, if I've noticed a big change, is that collecting is more of a job now than ever before. Like it used to be for me, collecting started and ended with, it's the weekend, I'm gonna go to this place, this other place, hit my usual spots, see what I can find, come back, play some games. Now it's, let me open up my Instagram and see if anybody's selling anything. Let me check price charting, see what's going on. Let me go online, like let me go on Twitter and see if anybody's talking about any like deals going on right now. Let me check like GameStop's website if I'm looking for anything specific. Like, you know, it's more of a let me do my research type thing now. Like what's undervalued right now? What's going for like big money that I should, like, if I can find for cheap, I should definitely pick up. Like there's a lot more conscious effort being put into like, what am I going to buy? How am I going to buy it? Instead of just walking into a store and just being like, all right, let's just see. I have a budget, anything below like this price. If it looks interesting, I'll take it home. You know, it's like, now it's like, oh, okay, this is $15. How much is it on price charting? $8. Maybe I don't get it. Like, you know, like I'm much more value conscious now. Because like things go up, they go down. Like I want to make sure that I'm not overspending and I'm not spending outside of like whatever my agreed upon budget is for any given time.
I don't know.
Yeah, I find myself pre-ordering games a lot more at times, just because I know they're going to be gone off the shelf in a week or two. It, like Shin Megami Tensei 5, I wanted the Steelbook edition. I forgot to pre-order it. Day one, I couldn't find it anywhere. I managed to find one copy online at a GameStop, so I had to go grab it that day. Yep. Where before it would just be like, it's going to be half price in a couple weeks for Black Friday.
Yes.
Or all new games used to dip in price, and now it just seems like it's still a gamble, even if you're purchasing something day one, whether it'll go up and down in price.
And personally, I've got burned on that a couple times, specifically with Switch games that looked good in previews and I was very interested in, and then I got them and they ran like crap. Like this has happened to me now twice. Yeah. And I pre-ordered them because I thought, oh, maybe it won't be available. It's kind of a niche game, and so. Yeah, it's a little bit unseemly, but at the same time, I will say one nice thing about the prices and the values is that I buy a lot less. Yeah. Like my budget my budget is higher than it was 5 years ago because I make more money now than I did 5 years ago. Yep. But it's not like that much more. And whereas before I would be able to get, 5 to 10 games a month, now I don't know, like 5 less than that even. And that's actually been kind of nice. It just kind of makes me sure that I'm getting exactly what I want and not just stuff because it's attractive or whatever. Yeah. Like it's really stuff that I actually want. So that's one positive.
Yeah, from a space perspective, it's also helped rein, like, if I could, if games were what they were back in, like, 08, 09, like, I would be drowning in video games. I'd just be buying everything. Absolutely.
Like, really?
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are, right?
No. I had to actually, I looked up the difference between hoarder and collector because someone was trying to accuse me of being a hoarder.
Absolutely.
So I actually looked up the difference. If you have it nicely displayed and you have everything in its place, you're a collector.
Yep.
If you leave it on the floor and you're just buying it because, it's cheap, and you have no organization and it's like salt and pepper packets everywhere and, oh my God, I'm going to need this later. Yeah.
We have the Delta variant. We have the same disease. We just, like, have different symptoms, Paul.
We just hide ours better.
Yeah.
They just leave the newspapers on the ground. Exactly. I'm not just going to leave them there. I'm going to take them home, all of them.
Yeah, I had a grandfather who was a hoarder, and believe me, there's
definitely the difference is definitely night and day. Yeah.
But there have been moments in my life where I've been, sitting in my car on the way to IKEA to buy my 6th bookshelf because I'm now overflowing off my other 5 bookshelves, and I can no longer rearrange the games in such a way that they will not be overflowing. Yeah. And on my way back, when you start pondering your life and where you are at that current moment, all the different paths you could have taken, all the alternate routes that destiny could have chosen for you. You really start to think about things.
Oh yeah.
It's
When
true.
you're driving home and you got that bag, you got that garbage bag full of
That's
games,
right.
and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, let me talk through each of them and why I really needed to buy. And you're just
You open the door, your
freaking
loved
out.
ones are seated in a circle. They're like, come in, we love you.
they're all
We're not
holding hands.
yeah.
They're all holding hands. They won't let you leave the circle.
We're not here to judge you.
Oh man.
The phrase "How to Save a Life" slowly playing in the
Oh
background.
my god.
So, but yeah,
That
pre-orders.
seems
I make a lot of them now too.
I buy a lot digital
Yeah.
for sure. It's definitely so much cheaper.
Mm.
The one thing I will say probably is not the best idea that I've been doing is I'll buy digital like Vita games that I have physically, just because I have it sealed on the shelf, and if I was to break that seal, I would lose $200 or so worth of value.
horrible.
But it's $4 on Steam, so
What are you gonna do?
let's just
You
buy
have to
them.
do that.
Come
Yeah.
into your game room, Kelly. I will rid you of this burden. I will open
let him-
every.
don't let
I
him
will
within
open
a
every
10-mile
single
radius.
one of them.
Do not let him within
No.
100 yards.
Just remember, the intention was always to play the games, but when you see the difference between sealed and unsealed,
Yeah.
sometimes
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just so hard. So hard to break
and
that
digital
seal.
games are the perfect example of what I was talking about with limited run stuff. I used to be staunchly anti-digital for a lot of the same reasons. I have way too much shit as it is. Like, I don't need to add more to it. Like, I can play forever. And like about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I finally started buying digital. I now have like 130 digital games on my PS4. And I'm constantly buying more every time, because every time one sale ends, another one immediately starts. So I'm always looking through to see what's the newest thing that I can find for the cheapest. And I know, and this one, at least it's like, $4 here, $2 there, blah, blah. If I was doing this with $70, collector's editions of freaking LRG games every like month or so, I would have no money.
Yeah.
Digital,
Yeah.
there's nothing, like 5 years ago, if you would have said, digital, what do you think of it? I'd be like, yuck.
Yeah.
But now, I'm okay with it. So
Gotta do it.
I think that a lot of physical collectors are starting to see the value of digital and emulation because of how we're getting priced out of everything else.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's the other thing we didn't really touch on is like every day emulation is getting better, and every day that happens is one day I'm closer to just being like, I can stop. I could just stop.
Never!
And play all the stuff I want.
From my cold dead hand,
it's
you will take my copy of Phantasy Star.
no.
Just wait until
No.
Saturn emulation just finally makes it, and I could just play Panzer Dragoon Saga with a click of my mouse.
Can't believe we haven't cracked that code yet.
Mm.
It's a testament to how good that system was, Paul.
That was perfect delivery.
Yeah, but for final thoughts for me is just basically where I see collecting going is I see a lot more digital collectors.
Yep.
I see prices continuing to rise, unfortunately, and it's just going to be those of us who are lucky enough to have the collections already. I don't see too many people getting into and having the collections we do in the future. But that's about what I see. Any difference from you guys out there, Paul? Do you see it staying the same?
No. If there's one thing I've seen in the past, 5 years or so, is that there are a lot of people out there with a lot more money than I have.
Yep.
Who are looking to spend it on something. And
Gotta spend that
that's
Bitcoin
how-
somehow, Paul.
that's exactly right. I mean, it really is that, right? So do I see things changing? No, I don't. There might be a point where when we are in our 70s, where you might see a flood onto the market of old NES, Super NES, all this stuff that, the kids today didn't grow up with, so they don't have the same attachment to. That might be something that happens. But I mean, I don't know. By then, I'll just be trying to successfully put a spoon in my mouth without smearing it on my face. So I think I won't care.
I'll be trying to beat Etrian Odyssey. That's what I'll be trying to do.
I'll be playing that for the rest of my life. It requires no reflexes.
Just drawing those fucking maps, just like hunched over your DS.
Oh god, that's true. I'd have to draw the map. Shit. But you know, for me, I don't know. It's funny. Like you just mentioned digital stuff, and that makes me think like the most important thing to me is the preservation. It's that there's a way that all of these can still be played. Yep. You know, I collect this stuff because it's fun, because it brings me joy, and I just play it and it makes me happy. But at the end of the day, like what's most important is that somehow this is getting cataloged, it's getting tracked, and we do have emulation to thank for that. And if there's a way that, you know, in the future these games are stored, they don't degrade, they could be there, they're captured, you know, that's the most important thing. So I think even if physical completely goes the way of the dodo and everybody is priced out and there's only a handful of, it becomes like the cyberpunk version of video game collectors where there's like 3 people who own every single game ever. I mean, even if that's the way it goes, as long as there's a way for everybody to play all of them somehow, you know, I can't be too mad about it. I just hope during that time, a bunch of people don't get fleeced out of their money by jerks trying to take their money.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that some other time for sure. Yeah. And Arnie, in agreement with us here?
Yeah, I mean, you're good. Definitely going to see a rise of digital games. There's short order is going to be a generation of kids who grew up on digital games and they have no attachment to physical stuff, and companies will be more than happy to start moving away from that, especially as internet connections start getting better around the globe. And you know, if I know anything about, if I pretend to know anything, which I don't, it's going to get much more ridiculous before it gets any less ridiculous. So I'm expecting prices on some stuff to keep fucking skyrocketing. I expect this trend to continue on its present course. And if at some point it all sort of goes kaput and somebody just finds 1,000 pallets of every rare game that's ever existed, good for us. But as we know, scarcity is not an indicator of what is going to be expensive anyway. So I think it's just going to keep going along on its merry way. And Paul's right. You know, the one thing I do see is a lot of people are getting out. I've seen a bunch of people selling their collections off. Yeah. People dying and, you know, leaving their collections to people who sell it off for them. Like there's always a lot of movement in that space, but there's still enough demand that's sort of keeping all that stuff out. Maybe at some point it'll get better. Not anytime soon, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all pretty much in agreement for collecting. Collect what you love. Yep. Collect how you need to. Yep. Play those games. Yep. We're all in agreement there, whether it be digital, physical. We're glad to have you in. We're glad that you listened to us here today. If you want to continue to talk about collecting or gaming with us, feel free to join our Discord. And you can also find our links on Linktree, where you can listen to more episodes and find us on Instagram, Twitter. We love to hear from you. So that wraps it up for this episode here, and we will see you next time.